So you just mentioned it. You had moved out to Kansas City, and this is the city that you've really ingrained yourself in helping out that community. You have tons of accolades across the city. You're a Missouri Sports Hall of Famer. What has it been like? What has your inspiration been to devote your life to this community?
Yeah, Kansas City is a great town. And I call it a town because that is how it feels. It is a very cosmopolitan, metropolitan like city, but it doesn't feel that way. And so it felt right at home for me from day one because it's small enough where you don't feel like you're totally just in another world, like you do sometimes when you go to the larger cities and the hustle and bustle of the larger cities, but yet it's still cosmopolitan enough, to bring that kind of lifestyle if that's what you want. And so I always felt comfortable here in Kansas City, although I didn't realize that I would make my home Kansas City. I thought I'd just come here, go to school, and then ultimately find my way to Washington, D.C., is where I had a brother. And really, from the time I was maybe 10, 12 years old, I was going to Howard University. And then it was in the 13th hour that Park College offered me a basketball scholarship. And I put my plans to go to D.C. in the suitcase and came on to Kansas City and followed the money. Because I tell people all the time, go where you want it now. And when I was going to Howard University, they wanted me to walk on for basketball, which I was prepared to do because I was going to Howard University, like I said, from the time I was 10, 12 years old. That is where I wanted to go to school. It's amazing historically Black college and university, amazing institution with a rich tradition. And so having gone to DC as a kid, I had, that was where I knew that I would pursue my collegiate career. And then, like I said, in the 13th hour, Park College offered me this basketball scholarship. And the next thing I know, I'm headed to Parkville, Missouri, which is suburban Kansas City. And I've been here ever since. But what you do is you fall in love with the culture of this city, the spirit of the city. And I was no exception. And so this is home. I've raised my family here, and I've lived here now longer than I did in Georgia. And so, but it's an amazing city. And then I got introduced to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum back in 1993 when I started volunteering for the museum. And so my path has taken me from being a volunteer to now trying to lead this great organization. So it is an improbable journey in its own right, but it's been one that has just been absolutely filled with joy and a complete labor of love.
And that journey you talked about, we're going to get into in a minute because it's been a long time coming for you in a lot of different roles along your journey with this museum. But as we start to break down the centennial, take me back 100 years now. Take me back to 1920 and the vision that Rube Foster had when he started this league. When the Negro Leagues came around, what kind of opportunity did that spell at the time for the future of Black baseball and for players at that time to make their name?
Well, it all kind of came about with the urgings of the Black press. The Black press have been pushing for a more formal, organized Black baseball structure. Now, keep in mind, there have been a couple of failed opportunities to create an organized Negro League. But in 1920, Rube Foster had the juice. He had the wherewithal to get it done. But it was really because the Black press had pushed for this. And so Foster organized a group of 8 independent Black baseball team owners. They came into Kansas City and they met at the Paseo YMCA, literally a stone's throw away from my office here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And out of that meeting came the birth of the Negro National League, the first successful organized Black baseball league. The Negro Leagues then would go on to operate remarkably for 40 years, from 1920 until 1960. But it all comes together because of the genius of Rube Foster. And he was indeed an absolute mastermind when it came to this game. I believe that Rube Foster is the greatest baseball mind this sport has ever seen. And very few folks, Tim, know who he is, even though he is in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. He is not one of those household names, but he should be because I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who contributed more to the game of baseball on all spectrums than Rube Foster. Because sometimes lost in the equation is the fact that Rube Foster was a brilliant baseball player. Rube Foster would have likely gotten in the Hall of Fame as a baseball player. He was that good. And so he was a star baseball player. He was a great baseball manager. He was a great baseball owner. And of course, he organizes the Negro Leagues. I don't know of anybody else who checks all of those boxes. And that's why I say I think you can make a legitimate case that Rube Foster is perhaps the most important figure in baseball history.
Tuesday night offered a clash of tri-state area teams when the New York Liberty met the Connecticut Sun. From the opening tip-off, the Liberty returned to a season-long troublesome habit. New York fell into an early hole due to a slow offensive start, trailing 18-8 after a quarter of play. Dating back to Saturday's matchup versus Las Vegas, the team had only scored 15 points in 2 quarters of play. The offense would respond with a terrific effort in the second quarter, outscoring Connecticut 24-11 to take a 3-point lead into the half. Despite a defensive performance that kept the game close, Connecticut responded offensively and survived a late fourth quarter push to seal a 70-65 win. Tuesday night's defeat did see the emergence of new offensive contributors for the Liberty. On a night where Amanda Zowie B made her presence felt with 10 rebounds to only 2 points, rookie Kylie Shook stepped up and offered 9 points. In a new role off the bench, Kia Nurse also found a rhythm to tally a team-high 18 points. Jasmine Jones also shined with 15 points, with no shot bigger than a half-court buzzer beater to close out the third quarter and cut the Connecticut lead to 7. Head coach Walt Hawkins appreciated the new contributions from his roster and spoke through finding consistency in personnel.
We're still trying to figure out rotation-wise, when the ball's not moving, when they're struggling to get it going, the first unit, when they're struggling to get it going, that second unit comes in and they're a little bit better about, putting the ball on the ground and attacking gaps and really getting it moving. Not always, but that's been a trend. When the first unit struggles, that second unit tends to do a really good job picking up the energy. It's, that balance of having one or the other, having a group of players who picks us up has been, it's been what keeps us in games throughout the year. The hard part has been having the whole group show up consistently. It's just been really hard. The story of the game was really how well that second unit played, particularly in that second quarter, to bring us back from an 18-8 first quarter, and then we ended up winning the second quarter 24-11, which is pretty remarkable for a young group. It was good to see.
New York will look to prevent a 3-game losing streak when they take the floor on Thursday night to square off against the Atlanta Dream, with tip-off set for 7 p.m. For WRHU Sports, I'm Tim Crowley.
And now we're going to turn it on over to the NL Wildcard Series that we've seen so far. And we're going to bring on Tim Crowley. Now, Tim, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Glad to see some more playoff baseball back and excited to talk.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, got a lot of National League Series to run through here. All 4 of them, well, most of them are pretty much done. 2 are still waiting to be finished either today or tomorrow. Let's run through the 2 that have already finished, all right?
Sure,
so,
sounds good.
Let's start with Cincinnati at Atlanta. How about you just give us a quick run-through of what you saw, or on the Red side, what you didn't see?
Well, on the Red side, you didn't see any scoring, and that was through 22 innings of play, and that dates back to Game 1, and what a way to start this postseason it was. You go 13 innings, you go into the bottom of the 13th, still 0-0, and starting pitching was really the story. Trevor Bauer was terrific, 7 2/3 inning, set the playoff record for Cincinnati with 12 Ks. Max Fried, who had kind of fallen out of the Cy Young conversation, he looked great after being hurt for a while, 7 innings, 5 Ks. And I think, Cincinnati really shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. You had Castellanos getting thrown out of third, you had the rundown play, just a lot of mental errors for Cincinnati that, they couldn't push a run across. And then obviously you have Freddie Freeman, who's had quite the MVP candidacy this year with the walk-off single off of Amir Garrett before yesterday. And it's the same thing for Cincinnati. Another awesome start from an elite starting pitcher in Luis Castillo. and the bullpen kind of fell apart later with Raisel Iglesias and just still couldn't score. And, that's the name of the game. And, whether you want to contribute that to, a really rough offensive performance for Cincinnati, or if you want to attribute that to what was a really great job by the Braves rotation in their bullpen, I guess that can be up to you guys.
And you touched on the point that I wanted to bring up, and with Cincinnati and their base running errors, to me it seemed like Cincinnati really tried hard to lose that series, and that's exactly what happened. And now you look at the Braves, who the first game obviously going to 13 innings, finally ending with a walk-off hit, and then they started getting their hitting going in the second game. Do you think they're on the upward trend here going into the NLDS in terms of hitting?
I think so. And if they are, it's going to be driven by those guys at the top. You're going to need Ronald Acuna to have a huge series. You're going to need Freddie Freeman to have a huge series. You're going to need Travis d'Arnaud to continue the season that he's had. You're not going to be in another position again. I don't think. It's not really probable that you're going to face another team that's not going to score a run for 22 innings. So those bats going to have to come live, and for Atlanta, it's going to be about their stars.
Yeah, especially going up against either the Cubs or Marlins. I think they're the favorites anyway, but we'll touch on that later. Let's move on to the next series that's wrapped up. It's Brewers-Dodgers. In my opinion, the NL equivalent of Tampa Bay versus Toronto, major underdog versus top seed, so high you can't even see him on the pecking order anymore. Tim, what'd you think? Did Milwaukee look alive to you in that series?
I don't think they ever really stood a chance. This was not the same Brewers team that we had seen go to the playoffs the last 2 years. This wasn't the same team that was a game away against the Dodgers in 2018 from going to the World Series. They've got a lot of injuries on their rotation, and for a team that really didn't have a ton of chance in this series to begin with, was not a great combination. And when you have to go up against a 1-2 punch like Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw, you're not going to have much of a chance either. Although you did see a little bit out of Orlando Arcia. Had the home run in Game 1, and he's a guy that only seems to produce in the postseason. So if Milwaukee can continue to get back there, he'll be a star in the postseason, and that'll be about it. But I thought Walker Buehler looked really good. I thought Julio Urias looked awesome out of the pen. And then for a guy that's had quite this narrative for some time now about his inabilities to pitch in the postseason, whether that be any example you want to bring up, 2014 against the Cardinals, his World Series troubles. Clayton Kershaw looked absolutely brilliant last night, going 8 innings, 3 hits, the 13 strikeouts, which is a career postseason high. He looked awesome. Mookie Betts, made his Dodgers playoff debut well worth it. Picking up on, if you want to go back a little bit, Mookie Betts' last game in Dodger Stadium in the playoffs before this, he was hitting home runs off Clayton Kershaw, and then he's able to drive in runs in both of the games. So a really good look for the Dodgers. The only concern that I would have is going with Brusdar Graterol last night for the save instead of Kenley Jansen. We saw him work in Game 1. There's been issues with Jansen the last couple of years in terms of either his health or his productivity. We're going to see if that's going to be a storyline moving forward for LA.
Someone got paid, Max.
The Kansas City Chiefs really opened their wallet when they signed Matt Moore to a 1-year deal earlier today. No, I'm kidding. Earlier this week, yeah.
There you go.
Patrick Mahomes became a very, 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 very rich man when he signed a 10-year, $503 million contract, the first $500 million contract in sports history. Needless to say, the largest contract in sports history. And Kansas City has their quarterback locked up for the next decade. Tim, your initial thoughts?
Well, it makes sense. We knew that there was going to be a serious payday coming for number 15 in Kansas City. And, if you ask anyone around the league right now, if there's one player you want to build your team around moving forward, if they say anyone by Patrick Mahomes, clearly they have not been watching the NFL since he entered the league coming out of Texas Tech. You saw the comments from Cliff Kingsbury this week, who obviously the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and at the time of Mahomes' collegiate career, the coach of Texas Tech, saying, he said back in 2018, this is the day he figured would come that Patrick Mahomes would become the highest paid player in the history of the league, in the history of sports. So, little psychic nature from Cliff down there, but a great move for him, obviously, looking back on that. But we knew there was going to be a serious paycheck handed out. We knew it was probably going to be upwards of $400 million. And, you look into the contract, it's 10 years for $450 million. And with full incentives, could make over $500 million. With full incentives, the deal would be for 10 years, $503 million. That's on top of the 2 years that are already remaining on his rookie deal. So for the next 12 years, Patrick Mahomes is going to be slinging passes to receivers and running backs and tight ends throughout Arrowhead Stadium.
And you've seen a lot of talk recently on the Twitter sphere and all over the internet about how the Chiefs are paying Mahomes this ridiculous amount of money, so kiss any more Super Bowl rings goodbye. How are they going to pay any of their players? And obviously that's something you're going to have to account for. But if you're the Chiefs, you're returning 80% of your starting snaps from a year ago. That's way higher than the league average. So you still have the same core that you did last year. Everyone's still getting paid the same as last year. Mahomes' deal doesn't kick in for a couple years. And earlier today, Tim, when I was looking through the details of Patrick's deal, so much of his money is incentive-based. It's like, I think it was like, if he's going to make $50 million a year, right? It was like 35 of that was a roster bonus.
Right.
So,
and it's team friendly. In that case, it's team friendly.
Yes. In that case, I don't know. But at the end of the day, he's the best player in the league right now, by far. He's one of the best talents at the quarterback position we've ever seen. He has the potential to be one of the greatest ever. And everyone knew from the moment he took the league by storm in 2018 that locking him up would not come cheap, and it didn't. There are just some players that you're willing to spend that crazy amount of money on because he is that type of player. He can change the game. He can change a franchise. Odds are he will lead the Chiefs to at least one more Super Bowl, if not 2, 3, 4, or 5. You never know. But Tim, I want to ask you, going off Super Bowls, I'm a Yankee fan, right? And there's been a lot of talk when they signed Garrett Cole this offseason to a ridiculous 7-year, $324 million deal, how many championships the Yankees will need to win over those 7 years to consider the deal worth it. For the Chiefs, they clearly want to win for the next 10 years, and that's what they're trying to do with Patrick Mahomes. How many Super Bowls do they need to win over those next 10 years to consider this outrageous $500 million deal a success?
I would put my magic number, I would say, around 3. I'll use your example. Garrett Cole signed that 9-year deal with the Yankees. I would say I would say they have to win at least 2 with the core that the Yankees have right now, but not to get too baseball-based. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think the Chiefs I'm still holding my ground on my assertion that the Chiefs win the next 2 Super Bowls, and I think they win a third. I'll tell you, as not only a Patriots fan, but as a Tom Brady fan, I'm worried. I think Patrick Mahomes, if all goes well and they have any way, if they bring in some sort of cap genius to figure out how they can continue to support him and have supporting weapons around him for years to come, he's got one down. I know it's probably overreacted, but I don't think it's that far out of the question to say that Patrick Mahomes could win 6 in his career. If it's a huge if they can keep a supporting cast around him. Because we obviously saw what happened with quarterbacks who don't have that supporting cast around them late in their career. They tend to falter, and that's just the way of life. That's the circle of life.
But first, your Newsline Sports Break with Tim Crowley.
Sports Update.
Beginning on the diamond, the Yankees returned for a final tune-up against the contending Miami Marlins, who looked to clinch a playoff spot for the first time in 17 years, with their magic number down to 2. The first of the 3-game series begins tonight, with first pitch set for 7:05 p.m. To our nation's capital, the Mets continued their final series of the season, playing the second of 4 games against the defending champion Nationals. Rick Porcello will take the ball for New York against Washington ace Max Scherzer, beginning at 6:05 p.m. To the hardwood, the Miami Heat look to clinch their first trip to the NBA Finals since 2014, when they take a 3-1 series lead into Game 5 against the Boston Celtics, with tip-off set for 8:30 p.m. Finally on the ice, the Tampa Bay Lightning enter play with a 2-1 series lead in the Stanley Cup Finals as they meet the Dallas Stars in Game 4 with puck drop set for 8 p.m. With your sports update, I'm Tim Crowley.